Hello and welcome to SweetSpotDFS. This is a strategy video for the 2021 Valero Texas Open. Now, what I like to do in these strategy videos is basically narrow down a player pool by looking at specific stats. I like to start out with a course breakdown because I want to determine if this golf course requires a draw or a fade or neither, if it's wide open. So I like to start there, and then I like to go into the sweet spot score, which will give us an idea of which tee time pairings we really want to focus on. Because I'm a firm believer, I'm a competitive golfer, that who you're paired with will either help you, hurt you, or might not do either. So the sweet spot score basically helps us understand which groups have a high upside for scoring. And it'll also help us make our Statement Games picks. So Statement Games is a sponsor of this video. If you haven't checked them out, it's a fun way to play fantasy golf or just fantasy sports in general. It's not just related to golf. So go check them out. And then I like to wrap up the video basically looking at strokes gain stats through bucket fashion, and then look at the optimizer, build us some lineups. But really I want to, focus on finding a core of golfers. So I'm going to do that in this video and provide that through my lineup creation I'll do at the end of the video. So timestamps can be found in the description below. Also on YouTube, those timestamps are found in the progress bar. It's called chapter mode. They're cut up into segments. If you hover over them, they'll give you the timestamp. So let's go ahead and get into this thing. And again, start with our course breakdown. Now, I'm going to let you read what's on the screen. Go ahead, pause the video, because I don't want to spend too much time talking about each hole. I'm going to let you look at the front nine and scroll down to the back nine so you can see what I have written if you care about it. If not, we'll just get right into the summary down here. Now, this course is pretty wide open. Now, there are trees that do line a lot of these holes, but there really isn't a forced shot shape whatsoever. You can see for off the tee, we only have one hole that really requires one shot or another, and that's on a par 5. So it's not absolutely necessary, but it's definitely beneficial to try to score well on it. It will require 2 pretty deep fades. So I'm really only looking at a golfer like Cameron Champ being the only guy that can probably reach the green in 2. I do believe someone like Ryan Palmer probably could as well. But yeah, you would want to focus on golfers who hit, who are bombers who hit fades. I think that would benefit just for this one hole. Not for the rest of the holes, not so much where it's a huge benefit, but just the one hole, it will matter. And then obviously you can see approach. One hole requires a draw, one hole requires a fade. And it's not so much requires, it's just going to greatly benefit those holes. So it's wide open. As I was doing this course breakdown, I'm like, man, what a waste of time. Because it does take me time looking at every single hole. And how I find this out now, TPC San Antonio, the TPC network of golf courses kind of sucks when it comes to like looking hole by hole, because they don't give you like a drone flyover whatsoever. You have to use satellite images. So that's what I ended up doing. Now, if I were to know every single hole and how it sloped on the fairways, how it sloped in the greens, maybe the preferred shot shapes change. But I don't get the luxury of looking at that. So I'm basically just looking at a 2D image of the golf course, of each hole, I should say, and trying to come up with how it's shaped, what shot shape really is required. But as you can see, I don't have any. So we cannot find a real advantage other than that one hole that will require 2 fades, like really good fades and deep shots in order to reach the green. And at least not just reach the green, but find a hard pin position if they do tuck it on the right side of the green. Anyways, let's move on. I want to talk about the sweet spot score, so we'll get right into the DK page. And we're going to be focusing on this column here, which does have some coloring to it. But let's sort from top to bottom of what let me actually tell you what the sweet spot score is comprised of. So I'm going to hide the buckets here and then scroll over to the right to show you how my scoring works. Now, this is obviously spreadsheet driven, so it's easier just to put the scoring in my spreadsheets. it's looking at official world golf ranking, course history, bogey avoidance, birdie or better, recent form average, DK average, and scoring average. And it's my own formula to try to get the best golfer in the field or in each of these stats to 100 points. So that's basically the max for most of these. DK average, not so much. That's just a direct number from what DraftKings provides when you download the sheet from DraftKings. So sometimes this is over 100, but very rarely do we see, a lot of them or one that's like at 130 or something like that. So I like to benefit those that do have kind of a high DK average because this is all about scoring. We want to find golfers who score well. And then obviously scoring average to me matters because the lower the scoring average, the higher upside of scoring points, basically. So I'm using these stats. I did have grass stats included. I was using POA, but the fact that this course is just if this is going to be any similar fashion to the Austin Country Club last week, which I'm sure it is. I'm pretty sure I remember this is a golf course where we see a lot of green sprouts in the rough. Basically, dormant grass looks brown, and when it's coming out of dormancy, you're going to see a little spotting of green all over the place. That's what we saw at the Austin Country Club. We're going to see that here. Also, I think the overseed that's on the, in the rough, on the green, or not in the rough, in the fairways, on the greens, I'm pretty sure there's going to be some Bermuda effect to them. I mean, they're overseeded with POA, at least the greens are. It's not like because I don't know, it's really difficult to pinpoint what type of grass is going to dominate or what's going to be prevalent. So I'm just going to ignore it and not put it into the scoring, into the sweet spot score. This I also did with the Corrales Punta Cana, and basically that was the highest success I've had with using the sweet spot score and trying to predict top 10 and top 20 finishes. If you haven't seen the review video for that, I highly recommend it because it was pretty spot on with the sweet spot score. So now that you know what the sweet spot score is made of, let's look at the top guys. I have the ranking over here. I apologize that it's colored, but we're obviously going to get to that with the tee time pairings. It's probably going to look a little busy to you guys, I'm sure, but bear with me. Our number one ranked golfer is Corey Connors, and I'm sure you guys have heard of him all over the place because that's all I've heard of all the podcasts that DFS Golf has to offer. Corey Connors is a favorite amongst many DFSers, if you want to call him that. And he shows up in the model. He obviously has good course history. He's been playing really good golf lately, so yeah, it makes sense, that he's number one. When I had grass stats in here, Tony Finau was number one, and I think Corey Connors was number 5 or 6, I want to say. I'd have to go look at the preview video to see if I can find it there, but I can't remember off the top of my head. But either way, Corey Connors is number one, and then Ryan Palmer's number 2. 2 9K golfers are the top guys in my model. If there is any reason not to play a 10K and above guy, I mean, here's your answer. But Tony Finau is third in the model, followed by Scotty Scheffler and Jordan Spieth, who are all favorites, and rightfully so. They're obviously really talented golfers, and I have no issue playing them whatsoever. You can see a few other golfers down from there. Charlie Hoffman, Abram Anser, Chris Kirk is our first 8K to break, or the first 8K to be shown. Going from top bottom for sweet spot score. Not too far from there is Zach Johnson and Lanto Griffin, and then a 7K golfer, Brandon Grace. Now we talked about him in the preview video. He was in a group, I think of just 4 other golfers, and now I can't think of it. Dang it. Should have written it down. Let me see if I can see it with the buckets. I wonder if it's this bucket. No, it would not be that one. He was in the company, I want to say, of Jordan Spieth and Danny Willett. But now I can't think for the life of me what it was. Wait a minute. Was it this one? It was not. All right. Well, I'm not going to try to figure it out while I'm on recording this, but he did show up. And it was one of those stats where you did want to play someone like him. So the fact that he is up here, he's the first 7K guy to show up, and he's ahead of guys like Sam Burns, Siwoo Kim, and Matt Kuchar, which doesn't surprise me. Matt Kuchar's not, I'm not high on Matt Kuchar this week, but it is surprising to see Brandon Grace up there. Now, personally, I'm not a huge fan. Every time I roster him, he just does poorly. And I know that's kind of a superstitious outlook, but I mean, we are all golfers and we're all gamblers, right? So superstition is kind of in our blood. I don't know. We'll see. I'll play some Brandon Grace, but obviously the optimizer is going to like Brandon Grace because he's a low price guy and highly rated in the model. So I'm sure I'll definitely have some exposure to him, but I'm probably going to set my ownerships kind of low on him. But really, I'm not going to talk about any more. Here are your top 20 guys. Danny Willett rounds it off, and then Ricky Fowler's number 21. But this is your top 20 when it comes to the sweet spot score. Now let's talk about tee time pairings. I'm only going to talk about golfers who have, I mean, you can see the column over here under game is also highlighted, and it's highlighted because they're either better than field average in DK points, scoring average, or a combination of the two. So the light green would be DK points. They're better than field average. Yellow would be scoring average, and dark green is a combination of the two. So that means they're both better in field average than, or I should say they're better than field average in DK points and scoring average. And really when everyone in the group is highlighted, that's where you're going to see the colors over here highlighted. One thing to note, there's been a lot of talk about the weather. I don't have it pulled up right now, and I'm not going to. But it looks like there's going to be some high winds in the morning on Thursday. Wind is the ultimate factor when it comes to any type of weather for golfers. It is the number one type of weather that affects golf shots. Obviously, you can understand why. Wind not only affects your golf swing, it affects the golf ball in the air. Like, that's the big one, but just so you know, it can also affect your golf swing depending on how high the gusts are. So definitely take a look at this Wednesday night to see if it's going to continue to be windy Thursday morning. Maybe avoid these guys that are in the morning, because the lower the game number, they're most likely in the morning. In fact, I'll just tell you when the cutoff is. Game 25 is when it goes into the afternoon. So anyone game 24 and below, this is the morning. So maybe avoid these guys, but let's go ahead and talk about them. Your first group has K.H. Lee, Sepp Straka, and Anirban Lahiri. Now, I don't trust Anirban Lahiri. He's extremely volatile, but K.H. Lee has had some pretty decent results as of late. So has Sepp Straka. So if you wanted to pair either of those two guys up, not terrible. Honestly, like that would be okay. And if I'm going to give you another piece of information, the shade of green is determinant based off the sweet spot score. If all three members equal under 100, they get to a darker shade of green. You can see Anirban Lahiri by himself is close to 100. He's in the bottom fourth, not fifth. I think he might be just the bottom third within this field for me. I don't trust him, but again, Straka and K.H. Lee I think are okay if you want to pair those guys up together. Our next group has Adam Schenk, Henrik Norlander, and Doc Redman. Now, I'm not, just like everyone else in the industry, Doc Redman has been discussed at length. He did have a decent showing, at the end of last year, but for whatever reason, he has just cooled down considerably. Basically what that means for me is like, I'm going to wait till he comes back around. Something's affecting his game. It could be a swing change. It could be equipment change. Because he's a lesser known person, we don't really know the information that is that could be affecting his gameplay. So I'm going to avoid him. Adam Schenk and Henrik Norlander, though, high upside guys, I think. And, you know, all of them are better than field average and scoring average. It's just not showing up on the DK points. So that's probably because they're not getting a lot of birdies and they're kind of grinding out for pars. That's my guess. But let's move on. Next group is really interesting. It has Abram Ancer, Cameron Davis, and Ben Martin. I'm pretty high on Abram Ancer this week. And I know a lot of people are also high on Cameron Davis. I don't mind the pairing. I think it's a dynamite pairing, those two guys together, 97 and 8,800. Ben Martin had a top 20 finish at the Cross Punta Cana. He had a top 10. That's why he's in the field here, because he had a top 10. I'm pretty sure. So to me, at 6,600, that's not a bad flyer play. So if you are on Cameron Davis or Abram Ancer, perhaps have a lineup or two with Ben Martin in it. I think that would be pretty decent. All three of them, I mean, Abram Ancer and Cam Davis, obviously better than field average in both DK points and scoring average. Ben Martin's up there with DK points. Actually, you know what? Let's look at this. I bet it's just the one week, the one day. What is your DK points? Oh, no. 65.75. Because he would have scored somewhere like 100 some points, close to that for the Corrales, or 80 points. I just want to make sure that wasn't the case, and it isn't. The next group has to be the best group in the entire field. It includes Corey Connors, Ryan Palmer, and Jordan Spieth. You can see collectively they equal 8 for a sweet spot score. Remember, I shade these if they're under 100. I mean, I shade them darker if they're under 100. Well, they're under 10. Collectively, they're under 10. This group, now, as much as the model loves them, I'm gonna give you a little bit of like word of caution. Both Palmer and Spieth are kind of primed to be letdowns here. Ryan Palmer, the last 2 years, has missed the cut. Prior to that, he's had the best course history at this field since 2013. Pretty close to the best course history. And we went over that in the preview. But he is a member at this I think he's a member. I mean, that is what I want to use the word has in there, and for whatever reason, I cannot put it together. That's been talked about quite a bit, is that Ryan Palmer is a member at this golf course. So I think he's also a member at Colonial, and maybe I'm mixing him up. I think he might just be a member at Colonial. But he's disappointed here. He is a Texan, so is Jordan Spieth. The chance of a letdown is pretty high, but I think Jordan wants to win this tournament. Obviously, he wants to win every tournament, but I think this would play huge confidence heading into the Masters. So I don't think he's just playing this and then just wondering, like, he's not the type of guy who's going to come into this and just practice for the Masters. Usually this is that tournament where Phil Mickelson will come to and just basically say, yeah, I'm just gearing up for Augusta. So I'm trying to hit these different types of shots around the green or into the green, pretending that, hole 13 here is hole 13 at Augusta, so on and so forth. So I think as much as like the upside for a letdown is there, this group could just turn out to be super hot right away and play really well at this tournament. Now, you also have to take into account this is a morning tee time. So if the winds are really bad in the morning, perhaps fade this group. The next group after that is Brendan Steele, Brandon Grace, and Kevin Chappell. Now, they all collectively are under 100 in the sweet spot score, so that's good. But obviously, Brendan Steele and Brandon Grace are, 9 and 12 respectively on the sweet spot score. So that in itself is really good. If you plan on playing any of these guys, I mean, if you plan on, let's say you plan on using Brendan Steele. I know he's been talked about quite a bit, but let's say you use Brendan Steele. Why not pair him up with Brandon Grace or Kevin Chappell? I think that's a pretty decent pairing. And in all honesty, if I if I anchor my lineups to Brendan Steele, I'm most likely going to have Brandon Grace or Kevin Chappell in it. I really don't have any issues playing Kevin Chappell this week. So it's definitely something I'm going to do. That would actually round out the morning group. There are no other golfers or any other groups that I want to talk about in the morning. I mean, there's 5, so that's pretty decent. Scrolling down into the afternoon, I think this is definitely the time or the tee time pairings you want to hammer. And our first group comes down, 8 groups into it. So Hideki Matsuyama, Matt Kuchar, and Phil Mickelson. Personally, I don't like any of these guys. I'm only talking about them because they are better than field average in one stat or another or both. Hideki isn't with both. Kuchar has a better scoring average, and Phil Mickelson has a better DK average than field average. I don't trust Kuchar, and I don't trust Mickelson, but I don't know. I think these two guys together are great, Kuchar and Mickelson, but you've obviously heard me in the past talk about how Matsuyama is on an island by himself whenever he's in a group. Doesn't matter if it's a good group or a bad group, he just plays to himself, and I think it's a lot to do with the language barrier. He's just to himself. So I don't think there's really any, benefit having Hideki in a good scoring group or in a bad scoring group. Like, it's not going to affect Hideki one way or the other. It might affect the other two guys, but it's not going to affect Hideki. So maybe it's a decent group to go with. I don't think anything does it for Hideki. We have 3 groups back to back to talk about. And the first one's Martin Laird, Jim Furyk, and Russell Knox. These are your savvy veterans, your consummate pros. They are all good at golf, but not super good at one thing. I talked about Martin Laird in the preview video. He was popping up on a bunch of things I was talking about, so I don't mind Martin Laird whatsoever. And being 23 in the model, 23rd in the model, and $7,100, he's going to show up in the optimizer for sure. And honestly, Martin Laird is a solid choice this week, as is Jim Furyk. He's 6,800. He was 6,900 at the Honda, missed the cut by 1, and the cut was around 2 under, or not 2 under, 2 over. No, it was 1 over, and I anticipate the cut to be the exact same number. I think Furyk gets in. He might get in at the number or just a little, like a stroke or 2 better than the number, but Furyk, not a terrible play. And then Knox, if it's windy, he's a Scotsman, so you can anticipate he's going to do fairly decent in the wind. And then the next group is Lanto Griffin, Siwoo Kim, and Adam Long. I really don't have, one take or another over these guys. I think they're maybe this is the time to like hammer this type of group because it's not a sexy group by any means, but collectively they're all really good. They're all ranking pretty high in the sweet spot score, and their odds are good. Salaries are decent. Like, you can roster any of these guys together. It's not gonna hamstring your lineups whatsoever because they're very close to being the average salary that DK allows you. So load up on them. I think it's a decent group. The next one's Zach Johnson, Sebastian Munoz, and Pat Perez. Another really good group. I like Sebastian Munoz. Zach Johnson's been playing really good golf, making more than usual cuts as of late. So $8,500, I think this is okay. I personally would want to see him like 78 to 82. I think I'd feel way more comfortable rostering him. 85 seems like kind of a pain in the ass to build lineups around. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is the week we just go completely balanced. And I never really do that. But I'm probably not going to do that. But if we are, Zach Johnson, Siwoo Kim, Lanto Griffin, they're all right next to each other. They're all in the afternoon. What a better time to roster those guys. Sebastian Munoz has high upside, and Pat Perez, I mean, he played pretty decent last week for the most part. He made the cut. I don't remember his finish. Oh, 48th. So didn't finish strong, but actually I think he made the cut barely and then just kind of disappointed. So maybe I'm remembering something wrong. But either way, not a terrible group. And I think this is our last group. Yep. Johnny Vegas, Matthew Neesmith, and Doug Gim. Doug Gim disappointed us at the Honda, but in all honesty, like, he wasn't set up to play well at the Honda. If you recall in my video, I think it was my strategy video, I was completely fading Doug Gim, and a lot had to do with his last week score, as well as because he had played really well the week before at the Players Championship, but also his grass stats, they were not good on Bermuda. Now, we're not on Bermuda. Well, we kind of are, but perhaps this is a time where Doug Gim turns it around, and actually this is a pretty decent place for him to do so. So I do like Doug Gim this week, and being paired with Johnny Vegas and Matthew Neesmith, it's a pretty decent group. So you have your options. There's about 5 groups in each that are decent. Okay, let's go ahead and talk about our statement game picks. And unfortunately, I did not highlight the colors here to talk about them, but I do have the website up. Let me zoom in a little bit. Not that far. I have my top picks up here, and you can see this on the Statement Games website. If you've not been here yet, I highly recommend it. It's a fun way to play. As you can see, you just pick statements that you rank, you know, how many points you think, or based off of your confidence, you put them higher. You'll get 10 points if you win this matchup. And my first matchup is Abram Ancer versus Hideki Matsuyama. I'm picking Abram Ancer. Hideki has been playing well, but Abram is from around this area. This could be a home course for him. I'm not positive. In fact, why don't we take a look? Where is he currently living? Home state's Texas. I don't have the city, but home state, like I said, it's Texas. So I think he is from this area. He just posted something on Twitter saying, you know, something like feels like home or something like that. So Abram Ancer, I'm picking him. The next one's actually a difficult one. Jordan Spieth versus Ryan Palmer. Really, both of them are good, and obviously they're right next to each other in the ranking. Palmer edges out Spieth just barely, and they are playing together. So to me, I think this helps out Ryan Palmer more than it does Jordan Spieth, and I think Ryan's just a more consistent golfer. I'm not quite sold on Spieth being all the way back, and I do like how Ryan Palmer played in the match play. So I'm going to give the edge to Ryan Palmer. And then Chris Kirk versus Lonto Griffin. Now, we didn't talk about Chris Kirk whatsoever because he's not in a group that has all 3 golfers better than field average in either scoring average or DK points, but he is 8th in the model. And when we look at him compared to Lonto Griffin, Lonto is 11th in the model. Maybe I should change this to Lonto since he's playing in a group that has a high upside of scoring, but for the most part, I personally like Chris Kirk. And a large part of it is because I'm rooting for him. I want him to do well. If you're not familiar with his story, I definitely I suggest go check it out because it's a good story. And he's been playing really good golf. So to me, I'm going to go with Chris Kirk. That's kind of where my heart play is. They're really tough matchups. All 3 of these are tough matchups. If I'm going to be completely honest, if you are playing this is what I'd have ranked as my overall top 10. And this would be my number 2. And I mean, then it would be like this. So that's how I'm looking at it. You can see my other picks here. If you want to copy it, go for it. We'll tie for first if that's the case. But yeah, those are my statement games picks. Link can be found in the description below. If you want to get into the desktop part of it, it's mostly you want to play it on mobile, but you can play on desktop. You're gonna have to click in one of the blogs and then go find the Play Fantasy for free, and that'll get you to the actual game. Okay, so we have gone through tee time pairings, statement games picks. Let's go ahead and get to the strokes gained buckets. So if you haven't been here before, I like to use, I have the old rankings. That's a bummer. I should have updated it. My apologies. But you can see who was number 1. You can also see who was number 2. Obviously that has changed. But basically how this goes usually is, first of all, I have the buckets here at the top. The row, the very first row, all the way across, you can see all the different columns that have each strokes gained bucket, is what I call it, what they're numbered, 1, 2, 3, 4. You can also see the description of what each one is. And then in the name ID, you can see kind of the rules that I have in place. Pick 1 to 3 strokes gained bucket 1, 1 to 3 strokes gained bucket 2, 1 to 3 strokes gained bucket 3. If you haven't seen this before, this is basically me looking week to week, analyzing the top 10 every single week, and finding that, despite the number of golfers in this bucket, strokes gained bucket 1 usually results in 1 to 3 guys inside the top 10. Now, it's a large number, but the minimum is 1. I guarantee you we'll see 1 inside the top 10. I'll guarantee you will see 1 inside the top 12. I'm way more comfortable saying something like that than say the top 10, but one of the guys is going to come from this group inside the top 10. And obviously it's a good selection of golfers, so it's not difficult, right? If you're going to bet top 10 and you have good odds on some of these guys, why not use it? It's a good way to start from. And then we come to the next group, which is strokes gained bucket 2 golfers. As you can see, it's a little bit less of a bucket than our strokes gained bucket 1 guys. But I also believe we're going to find 1 to 3 golfers in this bucket that will finish inside the top 10. Again, this is more of a... the bucket system is mostly just for that tournament. Like, it's just driven by top 10 stats for that tournament. Strokes gained is kind of looking at week in, week out, what do we see inside the top 10 more often than not. So it's not particularly just resulted in this tournament. It's just overall. But if you also kind of take a look at it, positive putting plus positive off the tee, it's easy to understand why we're going to see golfers inside the top 10 for this bucket. So if you see a guy you like, basically, I should have said this before, but just, write him down. This is how I like to diversify lineups, looking at these buckets. But I also like looking at the entire bucket system as a whole, and we'll kind of recap that here after this. So that was strokes gained bucket 2. Now, strokes gained bucket 3 to me also is a good bucket to pick from. You want to pick somewhere between 1 to 3 from these guys, and I will scroll down. You can see some of the other golfers in this bucket. If I can scroll down, there we go. And we'll talk about some of these guys a little bit later, but that is your strokes gained bucket 3. Now, strokes gained bucket 4, we could see 0 to 2 guys here, and you can obviously see Jordan Spieth is in this bucket, Lonto Griffin, Zach Johnson. Last week we found, I think it was 3 guys in this bucket. So, although it's not three guys in this bucket that finish inside the top 10. So although it's not a very confident bucket to pick from, you can certainly have more than 2 guys finish inside the top 10. It's just as a whole, it doesn't really average that much. So temper your expectations. If you see some guys that you like out of this group that are within this bucket, perhaps fade them. We might not see a lot, but because the strength of field isn't that great, and this is kind of what I've been realizing, as the strength of field gets lower, the more opportunity for a strokes gained bucket 4 or 5 for more golfers to finish inside the top 10 within these buckets. And you can obviously see these buckets are kind of your high volume buckets. So just by volume alone, we might see more golfers finish inside the top 10. But I still have more confidence in strokes gained buckets 1, 2, and 3 than I do in 4 and 5. But again, rules 0 to 2 out of strokes gained bucket 5. You can see the golfers here. And then strokes gained bucket 6 are golfers that I will fade. We can see Akshay Bhatia here. I know he's a favorite of a lot of guys. Ryan Moore has played really well here. He ranks pretty decent in the SweetSpot model. But I think, oh yeah, that's right. These are old. This is the old ranking, but I know he's still up there. Ryan Moore, let's just take a look. 7,900. So he actually drops to 60th when I take the grass stats out. So yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people have been talking up Ryan Moore. Maybe this is why I fade him, or why you should fade him. Usually we don't see anybody out of this bucket inside the top 10. We did at match play. Oh, no, yeah, we did at match play, but that was match play. Match play was weird. But I would probably just ignore this group. You can take 11 golfers out of your player pool. Also, likewise, I think you can also take all the golfers here out of your player pool. So another additional 38 guys you can remove from your player pool. So I would go that route. And that's basically what's going to round out the strokes gained buckets. The recap of the bucket system I have in this summary version to show you guys. This is easier to kind of talk about. And really, if we start at course history, our number one bucket that we want to target guys are the range of 40 to 60. So who has an average finishing position between 40 and 60 for course history? Second bucket is average finishing position between 20 and 40. I know it says 21 to 40, but it's really 20 to 40. Those are the two buckets that I'm really going to be concentrating on because the min max is greater than 0 for both of them. And obviously what that means is there hasn't been a year where there's been less than 2 golfers inside the top 10 within this bucket. We can see we have, how many they average a year. So course history bucket 2 has usually 20, and this year we have 20. So this number I think is a pretty solid number to go by. Also, when it comes to course history bucket 1, we typically have 30.83. Well, we have 35. So not a large increase. I think we're going to get around 2 guys in this bucket to finish inside the top 10. As we move on, we can talk about recent form buckets. And our number one bucket is golfers who recently, within the last 7 weeks, average finishing position is between 20 and 40. Number 2 would be 40 to 60. And again, we can see the min maxes for those. Again, this means we haven't seen less than 3 per year. So out of these buckets, definitely target guys who are recent form 1s or 2s. Definitely think that's a good way to go. And then last week, match play guys are going to be found in this did not play bucket because I actually misspoke in the preview video saying that 2019's results were here, but they weren't, or not here. They were, I had forgot to put them here, but they are in this bucket. I know that was kind of confusing, but I'm trying to avoid confusion. All match play guys are found in this bucket. So obviously that's your number one bucket. I wouldn't, to me, although I say that, I wouldn't load up on a bunch of match play guys because we don't know how fatigued they are. Obviously, Matt Kuchar would be in this bucket, as would Scotty Scheffler. They played 7 rounds of golf in 5 days. I don't know if I would actually target them, but there is the opportunity they will do pretty decent. Strokes gained bucket, or not strokes gained. Last week, bucket 2, our golfers who finished 1st to 20th last week. This is your Corrales Punta Cana. Now, the Valero Texas Open, this is only the second year it's followed match play. Typically, it follows the RBC Heritage. So that is what I'm pulling in. Going back to 2013, any tournament that preceded this one is in this last week bucket within these numbers. So it does change. Obviously, the last 2 years, including this one, we have the match play. Prior to that, we had the RBC Heritage, and I believe in like 2013 or 2014, we had a different tournament as well. So it's not consistent, but obviously you can see the did not play bucket is the biggest one for last week, again, including match play, and then number 2 is 1 to 20. So you can see the clip, 16.09%, finding the top 10 for this bucket, that's pretty darn good. Okay, so that was more of a recap of the preview video in the bucket system. Let's go ahead and start building some lineups. I guess what I want to do is start here. Actually, let's start here. This is how I usually like to pick my lineups. We are going to be talking about the optimizer, but what I want to do first is select some guys from here. So I'm not going to pair these guys up together. I'm just going to grab one guy from each. And really, I like Abraham Ancer. I like Chris Kirk. And maybe I should grab Tony Finau. Okay. So if you were with me in the preview, basically what I'm going to do is grab 3 duos and anchor my lineups around them. So I guess what I'm going to do is bring this over here so you guys can see what I'm going to do. I'm going to name this, or I'm going to give Tony a value of 1. Over here, I'm going to give Abraham Ancer a value of 2 if I can find him. And Chris Kirk a value of 3. So these are obviously my first 3 picks for anchoring my lineups around some guys. Now, what I'm going to do is basically find golfers that I like in these other buckets, regardless of who they are. I think no matter what, I do like Jordan Spieth. I'm not going to fade him. So Jordan Spieth is going to be in one of them. And I think where I'm going to pair him with is with Chris Kirk. So Jordan Spieth is going to get this 3 number with Chris Kirk. So I'm going to be pairing these guys up together. And when I create my lineups in this optimizer, all I'm going to do is lock them in and run it. So we can see what this first optimal lineup is going to look like. So when we lock them in, let's see who we get. So it's going to go Jordan Spieth, Ryan Palmer, Chris Kirk, Andrew Putnam, Nick Taylor, and Will Gordon. I like that lineup a lot. So I'm going to save that, and then we'll move on from there, and we'll take the next group that comes out. I got to pair Tony Finau with somebody. And usually what I want to do is find a decent 3 or strokes gained bucket 2 or 3. You know, I know Ryan Palmer was just picked in that last group, and that's fine. But I'm going to select Ryan Palmer to go with Abraham Ancer. And I think that is a pretty darn good duo of 9K golfers. So Palmer and Abraham Ancer. And let's see what that spits out. Now, unfortunately, because of my ownerships that I have set here, I'm not going to get any of those last guys that were picked. But this has Corey Connors in it, Brandon Grace, who I said was good, Martin Laird, and Peter Malnati. I don't mind Peter Malnati. I don't know if I really want him at this tournament, but if I'm going to anchor, 30 of my lineups around him, I'm not going to see Peter Malnati that much. But I like that group. I'm saving it. So we need to find our last pairing, and that's going to be with Tony Finau. So Tony Finau was in this strokes gained bucket over here. I want to select, I want him to be paired up with someone over here. Who do I want to pair him with? It'd be fun to do like a live chat right here to see what you guys would suggest. I kind of want to find like an 8K golfer or a 9K golfer to go with Tony. I'm also not opposed to maybe, I don't want to do several strokes gained ones. Brendan Steele might be a decent play. I also don't mind Charlie Hoffman. He's number 5 in the model. Let's see. Maybe it'll help if I actually look at the buckets. So what is our course history 1 guys? 1s and 2s. And recent form 1s and 2s. So Brendan Steele's up there. He is strokes gained bucket 3. So I guess we're going to go with Brendan Steele. And I don't mind that whatsoever. I think Brendan Steele is a pretty darn good play. Let's go ahead, mark that as our our core and see what type of Tony Finau and Brennan Steele lineup we can get. So Zach Johnson gets included, Sebastian Munoz, KH Lee, who we talked about, and Christopher Ventura, or Chris Ventura. I don't know about Ventura. I know it's a 6K guy, and I don't really mind that, so I can save that. And those were kind of, I mean, I'm going to do this 30 times. You know, I have this run and save 10 lineups, which is kind of cool because I can go here, and obviously my optimizer runs by what I set as my max exposure. Basically, I already know I'm going to put these guys in 30% of my lineups. So I'm going to go ahead and anyone that has a number marked to them, I'm just going to go ahead and put in 30%. So I already know I'm going to do that. And if you have this optimizer, I know I don't really talk about this in a lot of my videos, but go ahead and put 30% for each of these guys. If you do end up locking guys, I would highly suggest not putting your minimum ownership for a lot of these guys at the top, because it will kind of it'll make the optimizer go wonky. So I do have logic in place where if you have too many Ys up top, it's not going to look at your minimum ownership for some guys. It'll skip down to a price tier, but let's see if I put 1%, I'm sure it's going to skip. Yeah, it's going to skip Scheffler and Matsuyama, and it went straight to Cameron Tringali. So he was the next one on the list. He shows up in this optimizer. It's going to save, and then the next one that will come after that will be Charlie Hoffman. That is how this optimizer works. There you go. There's Charlie Hoffman right there. So just so you're aware of that for those guys using it, and if you actually do want this optimizer, I am giving it away. All you have to do is be a subscriber to this channel. You have to leave a like, comment in the comment section below, and I usually leave it up to you guys, but I think just having the open option deters some guys from leaving comments. So how about this? Give me your best 9K golfer. Who are you going to anchor your lineups around? Whether it's a 9K, a 10K, or 11K, or are you going to fade those price tiers altogether? Let me know. Because I am curious. I want to know. And then the fourth thing you're going to have to do is reach out to me through email at SweetSpotDFS@gmail.com. Primarily because I don't know what your guys' email address is based off of your YouTube accounts. A lot of people do not link their email address to their YouTube account. So when I go visit your channel or visit your profile, there's no email link to it. So I need you to email me saying, hey, I'd love to use this optimizer, and I'll send it to you, no problem. Also, if you do that, I'm going to give you the optimizer for the Masters. So I'll update the optimizer, and just so you are aware, there are a lot of functions within this optimizer that I don't talk about. I will create a video on this shortly, but it will record your lineups. It'll also show you what the metric is over here, and the salary used, the remaining salary. Basically, with this, all you have to do is just copy and paste this. If you're going to import, if you're one of those guys that likes to import lineups into DraftKings, you can do that easy. I also have this contest page down here. So what this helps me do is I copy and paste over that CSV sheet that DraftKings provides if you want to edit your lineups. So I'll do that. I'll come here, put in my contest right here. I'll actually clear out all of the golfers and then basically sort this by my most important contest that I'm entering. Usually it goes by entry fee, largest to smallest. So I'll have my largest entry fees at the top. And when I hit this randomize button, it randomizes what I already have saved here in the lineups. So as you can see, let me scroll in a little bit. I know you can't really see it. I mean, if you guys want to spread this out, go for it. I like it more in a minimal view, but you can see these are all my lineups. If I go ahead and just randomize again, you're going to see, okay, so Tony Finau has 2, but if I keep randomizing, we might see Abraham Ancer go to the top. We might. Doesn't want to. There we go. Abraham Ancer. So I can keep hitting this randomized. And just think, if you had 100 some lineups, and I like to also look at the last 2 guys to see who might tank my lineup. Will Gordon. I like Will Gordon. I don't mind this lineup. Jordan Spieth is, paired with Ryan Palmer, Chris Kirk. Love it. That's going to be let's say I'm entering the $33 whatever. I forget what it's called. And then this one is the $5 something. And then I go down to the $1 lineups or whatever. So this is how I like to do it, randomize. What this is, like I said, what this is doing is it's grabbing the lineups that we're saving in the optimizer and then coming over here and randomizing it. So basically, I know you get to eyeball it, but you don't get to, make sure your absolute favorite lineups at the top. Because as some of you guys say out there, usually your favorite lineup is usually not your best lineup. So you can go ahead and do this. And again, I'm really just looking at my guys here on the right side. So this is available to you, but I also load it with the tournament spreadsheet that I use. So you can see the dream sheet, as I call it, has everything that you see right there. So this is available to you guys. You can go ahead and look at this stuff. You can click in one of these cells, go to data, go to filter, and it puts a filter on everything. So if you want to go ahead and take a look at just a certain price tag, you can certainly do that. So if I want to, you can sort by these also. Let's sort by game, like how we talked about, with looking at tee time pairings. You can certainly do that. How about golfers who just hit a fade? You can go ahead and filter out by golfers who hit a fade and by salary. There's so much you can do with this optimizer. And I don't know if a lot of you guys realize that I actually provide that in the optimizer. It's a poor job on me for not showing this. Also, what I suggest you guys to do, if you don't like my metric, which includes all of this information, you can do whatever you want with this. So if I wanted to go by just official world golf ranking points, for some reason, I don't believe, okay. Yeah, okay, so that was a bummer. Let's go ahead. I'm gonna keep hitting back until, okay. I'm gonna combine these. So I think I sent this to one guy already, but I'm gonna combine them. That way, when you hit the filter button, everything is selected. So the issue that comes with this is if these are not selected with any of these, okay, this also has to be connected to. What will happen is it won't filter with it. So you want everything to be filtered because that is the representation, all of these scores, because there's no formulas in here anymore. When I copied it over, you want all of it to be together. But what I was trying to get at is if you wanted to go by official world golf ranking, actually you'd want to go by salary. Okay. So if you're going to update this, which you have the opportunity to do, you can replace all of this information. And I would highly suggest, if you do update it, to update everything. So if you do go to the dream sheet and you're like, I want to grab by the official world golf ranking points and use this as my metric, maybe not the greatest. And you can also use your own metric too. Maybe, okay, so use the bogey avoidance maybe. Yeah, okay, so you could do that. You could go ahead, use the bogey avoidance, go to the optimizer, and copy and paste it right into there. And now this will be a new metric for you. Obviously, the SweetSpot score uses a blended model. That's why the numbers are so high. It gives me a better idea of who's really better than another. Obviously, if you just grab one stat and look at that, that might not be the best way to go about, using this optimizer. You certainly can do it, but maybe not the best. But this is completely customizable to whatever you prefer. You can hand change any of this information here. If you want your minimum ownership for Tony Finau to be 20%, the optimizer will continuously pick this until the ownership number here is greater than that number. Likewise, if you select, minimum ownership for a lot of these guys to be higher than, say, 10%, it's going to go top to bottom. So it's going to look at the top guy and come down to the bottom. So be be understanding of that. But if you were to say, you know, I like Cameron Tringali a lot, I also like Chris Kirk, if you want the optimizer to make sure that it grabs those guys, just select all the way over to max ownership and then sort by this K column. Again, grab everything left of column L. Well, L and on. But let's sort by, what do we say, K? So if we sort by minimum ownership and we go largest to smallest, obviously now it changes to our top guys here. That way the optimizer knows to always grab these golfers first if their ownership is not correct. Like if this number is not higher than this one, it will automatically grab that guy. As long as the other piece of the logic also, you know, pass the test. But yeah, it's all to, like, you can customize this however you want. And I'm giving it to you guys for free. In the future, it's not going to be. But right now, because it's technically in beta, I'm allowing you guys to test it out. Give me feedback, that kind of stuff. So this is available for you guys. I kind of explained it quite a bit, or fairly long. But either way, all you have to do is be a subscriber, like the video, comment, and reach out to me on email. Or on Twitter, like the video and retweet it. Kind of give a little bit of a break because my Twitter following isn't that large and maybe yours is, or maybe it isn't. But either way, I still appreciate your efforts in doing those very things. So with that, obviously I created 3 lineups with my my anchors. I'm going to continue to create lineups. I usually create around 100 lineups and I'm going to use those anchors. So I'm going to go do that shortly. I realize Masters pricing just came out. This is unfortunate. I'm going to San Diego tomorrow and I'm bringing my laptop. So I don't have my setup with me. Like, I'm not going to have my setup with me. My audio is probably not going to be as good. I'm going to try to do some videos. I hope the audio is decent. My microphone is pretty heavy duty, so I don't think I want to bring my mic with me. It's heavy, and I'm only planning on bringing a carry-on, so I don't want this to come with me. So if future videos are kind of like for the Masters aren't very good, that's the reason why. And especially if the video quality isn't good, that's the reason why. And it pains me because it's the Masters and it shouldn't be that way, but it might have to be. So again, that's what you might have to look forward to, unfortunately. But anyways, let me get out of here and get you the ability to watch this. So thank you guys for watching. Please leave a like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. And I'll see you after I come back from San Diego. All right, bye.